I was never the kind of guy who sought attention. I liked things simple, low drama, clear expectations, just doing the right thing where I could. My name's Andy. I'm 34, and I work in IT for a mid-sized firm in New Jersey. I've been doing all right for myself. Stable job, decent savings, no kids of my own, but I'm not flashy about it. If anything, I've spent most of my adult life just trying to stay out of the messes my family seems to constantly create. And trust me, there's been a lot of them. My older sister, Danielle, is the ringleader of most of those messes. She's 38, a single mom, and has this exhausting ability to make every inconvenience feel like a tragedy and every favor she receives feel like something owed to her. Her daughter, my niece, Madison, is 16, and let's just say the apple didn't fall far from the tree. I remember when Maddie was sweet. Back when she was a chubby-cheeked 6-year-old who used to run up to me yelling, "Uncle Andy," and show me her latest crayon masterpiece. But as she got older and Danielle's sense of entitlement rubbed off on her, things started to change. Maddie became, well, difficult, spoiled. The kind of kid who doesn't say thank you when you buy her something, just asks if there's a gift receipt. And Danielle? She'd laugh and say things like, "She just knows what she wants," or worse, "You don't get it because you don't have kids." That line used to drive me nuts. I don't have kids, no, but that doesn't mean I'm clueless about what respect looks like, or gratitude, or, basic decency. Still, because I loved Maddie, and because I knew Danielle was struggling financially more often than not, I chipped in where I could. Paid for school supplies. Sent Maddie a little extra cash on her birthday. Helped fix their car once when it broke down in the dead of winter. Never once did I make a big deal out of it. I just quietly stepped in, did what I could, and went home. So when Danielle called me one Sunday morning back in March, her voice syrupy sweet in a way that instantly put me on edge, I already knew something was coming. She started with small talk, asking about work, if I was still seeing that girl with the curly hair. We'd broken up 3 months earlier, something she would have known if she actually cared, and then pivoted to the real reason for her call. "I need a huge favor," she said, her tone light, but with that underlying sharpness that always made it feel less like a request and more like a command. I sighed. "What is it?" "It's Madison's Sweet 16 coming up in May. You know how much she's been dreaming about it. I want to make it special for her, but with bills and everything." She let the sentence trail off, waiting for me to fill in the blanks. I already knew where this was going. "How much are we talking?" "Oh, nothing crazy," she rushed to say. "Just the venue deposit. And maybe the DJ. And, well, catering's kind of pricey, so? I was thinking you could help cover those parts. Just those." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Danielle, that's not nothing crazy. That's like the whole party." She laughed like I was being silly. "Oh, come on. You make good money. You're not even using it for anything big. No kids, no mortgage. Maddie would be so happy. You'd be the best uncle ever." That last part stung more than I expected. Not because I wanted the title, best uncle ever, but because it was dangled like a carrot. Like my value in this family depended on how willing I was to foot the bill for someone else's dream. And the worst part? I said yes. I told myself it was for Maddie. That maybe this would be a memory she'd cherish. That even if Danielle didn't say thank you, maybe Maddie would. So I agreed to cover the venue, a small event hall just outside town. I found a local DJ who offered a teen-friendly playlist and lighting setup. I even arranged for catering, Italian buffet, Maddie's favorite. For a while, it seemed like everything was going fine. Danielle barely kept me in the loop with planning, of course, but I chalked it up to her usual scattered nature. I checked in a few times, asked if Maddie was excited, and Danielle gave me vague answers like, "Oh yeah, she's thrilled," or "We're keeping some surprises, don't worry." I should have worried. I really should have. The first red flag came 2 weeks before the party, when I got an invitation in the mail. Not a call, not a text, but a stiff little envelope with glittery gold cursive that read, "You're invited to Madison's Sweet 16, a night of glamour." Inside, there was a list of dress code rules, hashtag suggestions for posting on Instagram, and a little note at the bottom that made my jaw tighten. It read, "Hosted by Danielle Walker." No mention of me. No mention of all the things I'd paid for. Not even a generously funded buy. Just Danielle. I tried to brush it off. It's not like I needed credit, right? But something about it rubbed me the wrong way. I called Danielle later that day. "Hey," I said. "Got the invite. Looks nice." "Thanks," she chirped. I noticed my name wasn't on there. Just wondering why. There was a pause. Then a laugh. Oh, come on, Andy. That would have been weird. You're her uncle, not her dad. That hit harder than I thought it would. Still, I said carefully, I did pay for pretty much everything. Another pause. Longer this time. Are you saying you regret helping? No. I replied quickly, but my voice was tight. I just thought. Never mind. She chuckled again, dismissively. You're overthinking it. Maybe I was. Maybe I wanted something I shouldn't have. Recognition, gratitude, something. But I let it go. Or tried to. The second red flag came the night before the party. I swung by the venue to check in with the manager, just to make sure everything was good to go. While I was there, I overheard Danielle talking to the decorator she'd hired, someone I hadn't even known existed. No, it's all covered, she was saying. My brother? Total pushover. He doesn't even ask questions, just hands over the credit card. I froze. My stomach dropped. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Something small, but sharp, like a hairline crack forming in a glass. I didn't confront her then. I walked away, sat in my car for a good 15 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel, replaying her voice in my head. Pushover. Doesn't ask questions. Just hands over the credit card. I wanted to believe she didn't mean it that way. That maybe she was just venting, embellishing for effect. But deep down, I knew better. I'd been the bankroller for too long. And Danielle? She didn't see it as kindness. She saw it as her due. Still, I showed up to the party the next evening. On time. Dressed up. Smiling. I told myself I'd get through the night, smile for the pictures, watch Maddie have her special moment, then quietly slip out. I didn't want to ruin anything. Not for her. But then came the moment that changed everything. That final straw. And when it happened, when Maddie turned to me in front of all her friends, rolled her eyes, and said the words that would echo in my mind for days, I knew something had to break. And I was done letting it be me. The ballroom looked like something straight off Pinterest. Gold streamers, soft purple lighting, those obnoxious oversized balloons with glitter inside, and a massive 16 centerpiece made of faux roses that Danielle probably couldn't afford without me. People were still trickling in when I arrived, trying to juggle a smile and keep my tie from strangling me. I didn't want to be there, not really, but I figured if I could just blend in, clap when it was appropriate, and maybe grab a slice of cake before heading out, I'd survive the evening. I just stepped inside when Danielle spotted me across the room. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She marched over, wine glass in hand, already halfway empty. Oh, good, she said, brushing imaginary dust off my jacket like I was a 6-year-old in church. You didn't wear sneakers. I was worried. Hello to you too, I muttered, pulling back slightly. Listen, can you keep an eye on the buffet for a bit? I told the caterer to delay the pasta trays until 7:30, and I need to go help Maddie with her makeup. She's freaking out about her eyeliner. Again, I blinked. The caterer? That's not really. She was already walking away. No, thanks for everything. No, how are you? Just orders. Like I was one of her hired staff. I sighed, made my way to the buffet table, and stood awkwardly next to a tower of mini quiches like a miscast extra in a soap opera. A few guests smiled politely, but most ignored me. They didn't know who I was. Why would they? Danielle hadn't introduced me to anyone. 10 minutes later, I spotted Maddie making her grand entrance. She came down the staircase in a pale pink satin dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, surrounded by a gaggle of friends and 2 teenage boys who looked like they were either hired as party motivators or just there to look pretty. Phones were out, flashes going wild. She posed. She twirled. She looked like a star. And she didn't even glance in my direction. I told myself that was fine. Maybe she was nervous. Overwhelmed. It was her night, after all. I stuck to the sidelines, sipped my soda, and tried to find a spot where I didn't feel like a ghost. The DJ started up with some top 40 track, and kids began dancing. The energy in the room lifted. For a moment, I thought maybe things would stay manageable. Maybe I could get through it. Then came the speeches. Danielle took the mic first. Her voice trembled as she talked about how proud she was of her little girl, how much she'd sacrificed to raise her alone, and how tonight was the culmination of years of hard work. She choked up a little, which I'll admit almost got to me, until she said, I did all of this for you, Maddie. Every detail, every cent. All me. I stood frozen, one hand in my pocket, the other clenching my drink so tightly I thought the plastic cup might crack. My ears buzzed. I felt hot. I didn't need a standing ovation, but that was a lie. A public lie. And Maddie smiled so sweetly at her like it was gospel. Then Maddie took the mic. She launched into this breathy, rehearsed-sounding speech about how much her mom meant to her. That part was fine. Expected, even. But then she started talking about how she was so glad we could pull this off on our own, and how, even when people doubted us, they did it anyway. That's when it hit me. The looks. The phrasing. The way her eyes flicked across the room and landed on me for just a moment before sliding away like I didn't exist. It was deliberate. And Danielle was grinning behind her like the proud director of a Broadway production she didn't pay to produce. I walked outside. I didn't even think about it. I just needed air. I stood near the parking lot, breathing in the cool spring evening, trying to keep it together. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't. That wasn't who I was. But something was boiling under the surface, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had spent nearly $6,000 on this party. $6,000. From my savings. And not once had either of them said thank you. Not when the bookings were made. Not when the checks cleared. Not even when the lights came up and the music played. And now, I was being erased. I stared up at the sky, letting the chill seep into my skin. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my cousin Kelly, who was somewhere inside the ballroom. Hey, Maddie just made a joke about your car. Something about how tacky it was for a grown man to drive a Honda to a sweet 16. That was the moment the boiling cracked the pot. I walked back inside. The room was alive again. Music thumping, kids dancing, parents sipping wine, phones capturing every staged smile. Maddie was on the dance floor now, taking selfies with her friends and waving sparklers someone had handed out prematurely. Danielle stood near the bar, laughing at something some man said, not a care in the world. I didn't go to them. I stood near the corner, watching. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I thought maybe I'd calm down, that I'd come to my senses. But instead, I watched Maddie approach the DJ booth and say something. The DJ laughed. She said something else, and he bent over to listen. Then I saw it. Her rolling her eyes, and the unmistakable words, "This is so lame." My uncle ruined everything. I didn't need to hear it. I could read her lips. And that was it. I didn't even feel angry. Not anymore. I felt clear. I stepped forward. Quietly. Calmly. Walked up to the DJ and leaned over to him. Hey, I'm the one who paid for this, I said, handing him a folded bill. You're done for the night. He blinked. Seriously? I nodded. Cut the music. He hesitated, but the money in his hand made the decision easy. Within seconds, the music died mid-beat, and the crowd let out a collective groan of confusion. I turned away before the murmuring could escalate. Walked straight to the caterer, who was restocking the pasta trays. Hi, I said. I need you to pack everything up. Party's over. You'll still be paid in full. Just wrap it up. The man blinked, clearly confused. But, we were told. I'm the one who hired you, I said calmly. Wrap it up. As they began moving quickly, collecting trays and clattering silverware, a hush fell over the room. People were looking around, trying to understand what was happening. That's when Danielle stormed over. What are you doing? She hissed, face flushed. Why is the music off? Why is the food? Andy, what are you doing? I looked her in the eye. I funded this party, Danielle. Not you. Me. She scoffed. Are you seriously throwing a tantrum because your name wasn't on a stupid invite? No, I said, voice flat. I'm doing this because your daughter just told a room full of people I ruined her night. After I spent thousands of dollars to give her this night. After being treated like hired help. After hearing you brag about manipulating me. Maddie appeared beside her then, red-faced, mascara starting to streak. Uncle Andy, what the heck? You're embarrassing me. I turned to her, something heavy in my chest finally cracking. You know what, Maddie? Maybe someone should embarrass you. Because clearly, you haven't been taught what gratitude looks like. I didn't do this to be your hero. I did it because I thought it mattered. Because I remembered who you used to be. But you've made it crystal clear. You don't care. Not about me. Not about any of this. She gawked at me like I'd slapped her. People were staring now, whispering, phones half raised like they weren't sure if this was part of the entertainment. Danielle grabbed my arm. You're ruining everything. I shook her hand off gently but firmly. No, you ruined it. You taught your daughter to value things over people. And now she doesn't know the difference. Then, without another word, I turned, walked out the ballroom doors, and didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because behind me, I heard Maddie start screaming. And Danielle? She was finally the one left picking up the pieces. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because what came next, the fallout, the calls, the gossip, the twist I didn't see coming. That's when the real story began. And trust me, it got messy. When I walked out of that ballroom, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like a man who'd just served righteous justice. I felt hollow. The kind of emptiness that doesn't hit you all at once but creeps in slowly, hour by hour, like fog filling a field. That night, I didn't even go home. I drove around town in circles until the gas light came on, then parked in a near-empty diner lot and sat there, staring at my hands on the steering wheel. I kept hearing Maddie's voice echo in my head. This is so lame. You ruined everything. And Danielle's too. You're ruining everything. As if I was the villain. As if I had committed some kind of personal crime by refusing to be used. When I finally got home, the silence was deafening. I didn't turn on the lights. Just dropped my keys on the counter and sank into the couch. At some point, I fell asleep with my shoes still on and woke up the next morning to a dozen missed calls. 4 from Danielle. 1 from Maddie. The rest were from family. I stared at my phone for a long time before unlocking it. There was a text from my mother, short and sharp. Call me when you've calmed down. That was it. No question if I was okay. No acknowledgement of what had led to that moment. Just a reprimand. A few hours later, I got a call from my Aunt Laura. She was the only one in the family who ever spoke to me like I was a human being instead of a resource. I answered. I heard what happened, she said softly. I braced myself. Did you hear the whole story? I heard Danielle's version, she admitted. But I know you, Andy. You're not the type to blow up unless something's been simmering for a long time. I let out a shaky breath. I wasn't trying to ruin her party. I couldn't stand there and pretend anymore. I believe you. That meant more than she probably knew. Still, the fallout was immediate. Danielle unleashed a wave of passive-aggressive posts on Facebook, vague enough not to name me directly, but obvious enough for anyone who'd been at the party. Imagine thinking you can buy love. Sad, she wrote in one. Another had a photo of Maddie looking miserable with the caption, she deserved better. She always does. People started picking sides. My cousin Kelly messaged me, furious with Danielle. She's rewriting the whole thing, she said. Telling everyone you planned it as a power play. That you embarrassed her on purpose. It was like high school drama wrapped in family dysfunction. I tried to stay silent. I didn't post anything. I didn't defend myself online. I didn't even answer Danielle's calls. What was there to say? I'd said my piece. But the silence only seemed to make them angrier. And slowly, I began to realize something painful. Most of the family wasn't mad that I'd been disrespected. They were mad that I'd stopped playing along. For years, I'd quietly picked up the tab, filled the gaps, smiled through the disrespect. And the moment I dared to set a boundary, I became the problem. It hurt more than I expected. One by one, family events started happening without me. I wasn't invited to my nephew's birthday. No one mentioned the family barbecue in July. Even Thanksgiving, my mother's house, the tradition for over a decade, I was accidentally left off the group text. When I confronted her, she said, well, I assumed you wouldn't want to come. After the drama. Drama you never asked me about, I said. She didn't respond. By December, I was the ghost of the family. And honestly, it nearly broke me. I stopped going out. Stopped calling anyone. Work became a blur. I did the bare minimum, logged off, and stared at the wall most evenings. The holidays were the worst. I spent Christmas alone, eating microwave lasagna and watching a sitcom rerun. I didn't laugh at once. I kept thinking, was I wrong? Did I go too far? Should I have just shut up and smiled like always? The self-doubt was loud and constant, until one night, I found myself scrolling through old pictures on my phone. Photos from Maddie's earlier birthdays, when I'd taken her to the zoo, or baked cupcakes with her in my tiny apartment kitchen. There was one of her, age 9, wearing a paper crown I made her from printer paper and glitter glue, grinning like she'd just been handed the moon. She used to love me. She used to see me. When did that stop? I couldn't find the exact moment, but I knew it wasn't sudden. It was a slow erosion. One that started the day Danielle realized she could use my kindness like a debit card, swipe, spend, repeat, without ever worrying about the balance. And I'd let it happen. That realization was painful, but it was also clarifying. If I was going to rebuild anything, it couldn't be with people who saw my worth only when it benefited them. So I started small. I cleaned my apartment, top to bottom. Got rid of boxes I'd been ignoring for months. Donated clothes I hadn't worn in years. Replaced my old couch with something that didn't sag in the middle like my spine after family dinners. I bought groceries and cooked real meals again, not just frozen junk. I even signed up for a weekend woodworking class, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. Each little thing felt insignificant at first, but together, they added up. At work, I started volunteering for projects again. My manager noticed. She pulled me into a big account, and by March, I'd earned a surprise promotion. It came with a raise and, more importantly, respect. My coworkers stopped seeing me as the quiet IT guy and started asking for my input. That did something to me. Reminded me I wasn't invisible. Outside of work, I reconnected with an old friend, Nate, from college. We'd lost touch years ago, but he reached out after seeing one of Danielle's cryptic posts and putting two and two together. She's always been like that, he said, not unkindly. But you've always been solid. We started grabbing coffee every Saturday, talking, laughing. It was refreshing to be around someone who didn't expect anything from me beyond presence. Through Nate, I met Emily, his sister-in-law. She was warm, sharp, and had a laugh that made you forget how heavy the world could be. We hit it off slowly, organically. No games, no pressure, just two people figuring it out one conversation at a time. By early summer, I found myself waking up with purpose again. There were still moments, quiet nights where the loneliness crept in, or family memories poked at old wounds, but they didn't consume me like before. One evening in June, I got a letter in the mail. Actual paper. From Maddie. The handwriting was messy. The envelope was addressed in all caps. Inside was a single page. No greeting. No signature. Just, you humiliated me. Everyone saw. I don't care if you paid. It was MY night. You ruined it. I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was hurt, but because I finally saw it for what it was. Proof that Danielle had passed down more than bad habits. She'd passed down her entitlement like a family heirloom. And now it was Maddie's. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That letter told me everything I needed to know. But a week later, something unexpected happened. I ran into my younger cousin, Sam, at the hardware store. He was grabbing tools for a home reno project. We hadn't talked in almost a year. He smiled when he saw me. Hey man, I've been meaning to text you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, he looked sheepish. Just wanted to say, I think you did the right thing. At the party, I saw it. I saw how they treated you. No one wanted to admit it out loud, but they were awful. And honestly, it needed to happen. I didn't know what to say. He continued, you're not the villain, Andy. You were just the first one to stop playing along. That takes guts. I nodded, throat tight. It was the first time anyone in the family had said it. Out loud. To my face. And maybe it didn't fix everything. Maybe it didn't erase the damage. But it reminded me that I wasn't crazy. That standing up for myself didn't make me wrong. It made me free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. But I wasn't done. Because what happened next, what Danielle tried to pull when the money stopped flowing, was something I never saw coming. And this time, I didn't just walk away. I made a plan. One that would change everything. By the time autumn rolled around, I'd reached a place of cautious peace. I wasn't thriving in some inspirational movie montage kind of way. There were still rough days, still scars that hadn't quite faded, but I was standing straighter, breathing deeper. And more importantly, I'd stopped looking back. Mostly. But then came the call. It was late September, right after I'd wrapped up a big project at work. I was sitting on the balcony of my apartment, sipping coffee and watching the leaves turn, when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Danielle. I stared at it, thumb hovering. Part of me wanted to block the number and move on. But curiosity, that old, stubborn itch, got the better of me. I answered. Her voice was tight, controlled. Hey, Andy. Wow, I said, leaning back. You still have my number. She ignored the jab. I need to talk to you. It's important. That's usually what people say when they want something. There was a pause. She was used to the old version of me, the one who would bend the moment she raised her voice or played the guilt card. But that Andy had left the building a long time ago. She exhaled sharply. It's about Maddie. She's struggling. Struggling. I repeated. You mean academically, emotionally, spiritually? Or just not getting the things she wants handed to her? She's been depressed, Danielle snapped. After the party, things haven't been the same. She's pulled away. Her grades are slipping. She barely talks to me. I think she blames me. I stayed silent, letting that last sentence hang in the air. Good. She keeps saying it was supposed to be the best night of her life. Danielle went on, voice brittle. And she says I embarrassed her, that I let it all fall apart. You did, I said calmly. I'm trying, okay? Her voice cracked, but I don't know how to fix it. That caught me off guard. She wasn't calling to yell. She wasn't calling to guilt-trip me into writing another check. She was calling because she didn't know what to do. That scared me more than her usual nonsense. I thought maybe, she hesitated. Maybe you could talk to her. I blinked. Me? She used to look up to you, she said quietly. Before everything got twisted. Before you twisted it, I thought. But I didn't say it. Instead, I said, I'll think about it. We hung up, and I sat there for a long time. That conversation stirred something I'd buried. I hadn't stopped loving Maddie, not really. I hated what she'd become, but I also knew kids weren't born selfish. They were taught, trained, molded. And if she was starting to question the mold, maybe there was hope. But I wasn't going to just waltz in and offer comfort. No. If Danielle wanted my help, if Maddie wanted my time, then it had to mean something. That night, I opened a new note on my phone and started writing. A plan was forming. Not revenge in the traditional sense. Not yelling or public shaming or taking away a birthday cake. No, this time it would be quiet. Strategic. Surgical. I was done playing the victim. This time, I was going to teach a lesson. And I wouldn't have to lift a single voice to do it. The first piece of the puzzle came from a contact at work. Sarah, one of our project managers, was friends with a local nonprofit director. They ran mentorship programs for at-risk teens who'd never had a stable home or reliable income or a fraction of the opportunities Maddie had taken for granted. I called in a favor. Could you use a few extra volunteers? I asked. Even just once a week. She was thrilled. Absolutely. Especially someone with tech experience. The next week, I showed up at their downtown office and met a group of teenagers who'd survived more in 16 years than Maddie had in her whole life. And yet, they were polite, curious, grateful. They asked questions. They listened. They tried. And when I got home that night, I felt something I hadn't in months. Purpose. These kids didn't care about glitter balloons or hashtags or Instagram aesthetics. They wanted to learn, to build, to matter. I kept going back. Every week. Teaching basic coding skills. Helping with resumes. Showing them how to navigate job portals and build portfolios. I wasn't just helping them. I was sharpening my edge. Because the second piece of the puzzle came through those connections, specifically a girl named Layla. She was 17, brilliant, and already interning at a local event management company. The same company, it turned out, that sometimes worked with Danielle's go-to-decorator. When I told her my last name, she smirked. Oh, your sister? She's the one who demanded the balloon arch be more inspirational, right? My boss still talks about it. Bingo. We started chatting after sessions. I told her pieces of the story, not everything, just enough to give context. She wasn't just smart, she was observant. And she had opinions. She's used to controlling the narrative, Layla said. So take that away from her. How? She shrugged. Show people the truth. But make it seem like they discovered it. That stuck with me. Over the next month, I began gathering threads. I compiled receipts, emails, text messages, bank transfers. Every single contribution I'd ever made to Danielle or Maddie over the past 5 years. School payments, grocery money, rent coverages, party expenses. I put it all in a folder. But I didn't just keep it for myself. I started talking, casually, to mutual friends, distant relatives, acquaintances who had always accepted Danielle's version of events because they never heard mine. I didn't rant. I didn't vent. I just let them see. Oh yeah, I covered Maddie's school fees that year. Danielle was behind on rent. She never told you? Yeah, the Sweet 16 was $5,700. I paid every cent. No big deal. I just wish they'd told the truth. That was all it took. Because when people think you're generous, they like you. But when they realize someone else lied about your generosity, they turn. By December, the family grapevine was buzzing again. I wasn't being invited to events, no? But this time, neither was Danielle. She said Andy ruined Maddie's birthday. One cousin told another. But I just found out he paid for the whole thing. What kind of person lies about something like that? She's always been like that. It's just the first time Andy stood up to her. And then came the third piece. Maddie. Danielle had been right. Something had shifted. The confidence was cracking. The curated social media posts were slowing. She wasn't posting selfies with captions like "Queen of Everything" anymore. Instead, there were photos of sunsets, long captions about feeling misunderstood, and once a post that said, "It's weird when you realize the person who always had your back isn't picking up the phone anymore." That one hit me harder than I expected. But I didn't comment, didn't like it, didn't reach out, let her sit with it. Until one afternoon in January, I got an email from Maddie. Not a text, not a call, an actual email sent from her school account. Subject, "For what it's worth." It read, "Uncle Andy, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you, but I wanted to say I've been thinking about what happened. About everything. You were right. I was awful. I thought if I acted like I didn't care, then none of it would hurt. But it does. It really does. I miss you. Not just the money or the gifts or the parties. You. I didn't realize how much you did until everyone stopped showing up. And now I don't know how to fix it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know." Maddie. I read it twice. Then again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't overflowing with accountability. But it was honest. Or trying to be. Still, I didn't respond. Not yet. Because the final piece wasn't in place. And when it arrived, it came with an invitation. A birthday party. For Danielle. Her 40th. Thrown by Maddie. She was trying, in her own way, to make amends. And this party? It was going to be my stage. Not for vengeance. For revelation. But what I had planned, let's just say no one was ready for it. Especially not Danielle. I got the invitation in early February. White linen paper, gold foiled edges, and a thin cursive font so delicate I could barely read it. It smelled faintly of overpriced perfume. The envelope was sealed with wax, because of course it was. Inside, the invitation read, "Please join us for an elegant evening celebrating Danielle Walker's 40th birthday. Formal attire required. Hosted with love by her daughter, Madison." I stared at it for a long moment, the irony heavy in my lap. Danielle was the queen of appearances, and this invite was her latest throne. But the fact that Maddie was hosting, it told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a birthday party. It was an image restoration campaign. Maddie wanted redemption. Danielle wanted relevance. And they needed me to play along to get it. I almost didn't go. Almost. But then I remembered the email Maddie sent. The soft cracks in her armor. The slow unraveling of Danielle's carefully manicured kingdom. And more importantly, the folder I'd been compiling over the last several months. Every receipt, every email, every quote, every screenshot, every time they'd twisted my kindness into obligation and used it like a crowbar. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. To remind them I wasn't their wallet anymore. To show them that silence doesn't mean weakness. And to let the truth walk into that party wearing polished shoes and a tie. I RSVP'd yes. And I started making calls. The first was to Layla, the brilliant intern-turned-insider at the event company that once decorated Maddie's party. She'd since moved on to a PR firm, but still had friends on the inside. I asked if she could help me sponsor a small gift for the party. Discreetly. Something elegant, I said. Professional. The kind of thing Danielle would never turn down in front of a crowd. Got it, she said. And what's the catch? There's a card inside. She laughed. This is going to be good. I also called Sarah at the nonprofit and asked if she'd be willing to send a representative to speak for a few minutes at the party. A short speech. Nothing dramatic. About what? She asked. About gratitude, I said. And seeing the people who work behind the scenes. She hesitated. You sure you want to do this? I'm not out for blood, I replied. Just truth. That part was important to me. I didn't want a shouting match. I didn't want revenge that tasted like bitterness. I wanted clarity. For Maddie. For me. And even, if she was capable of it, for Danielle. The night of the party arrived like a slow-moving storm. It was held at a boutique ballroom downtown, walls lined with gold-trimmed mirrors and soft amber lighting. A hired string quartet played something classical at the entrance. Guests arrived in sleek black suits and glittering gowns. I wore a navy suit, pressed and clean, with a silver tie Maddie had once given me for Christmas when she was 9. I hadn't worn it in years. As I walked in, heads turned. Not because I was impressive or important, but because I was unexpected. The black sheep had arrived, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Danielle was easy to spot. She stood under a massive floral arch, bathed in candlelight, sipping champagne from a tall crystal flute and laughing that high, too loud laugh she reserved for attention. Her dress was shimmering, floor-length, the kind of thing you wear when you need the room to know you still matter. Maddie was beside her, in black velvet, her makeup dramatic, her expression guarded. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Regret? Relief? I couldn't tell. But she gave me a small nod, and I nodded back. I was handed a glass of champagne by a passing server and drifted toward the far end of the room, staying on the periphery, watching. Then came the speeches. First, Maddie stepped up. Her voice was calm, but shaky around the edges. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Tonight means a lot to my mom, and to me. This past year's been difficult for us, but also full of lessons. About love, about family, about humility." She glanced at me briefly. "We don't always get it right," she continued, "but we keep trying. And tonight, I just want to celebrate the woman who's taught me so much, who's always been there." Danielle beamed, misty-eyed, soaking in the applause as Maddie handed her the mic. "Thank you, darling," Danielle said. "You've grown into someone I'm so proud of." She turned to the crowd, that old polished charm returning like a well-worn jacket. "I've lived a lot in 40 years. Raised a daughter on my own. Fought through struggles. Found my strength. And tonight, I feel surrounded by love." She raised her glass. "To perseverance. And to knowing who your true people are." Everyone clapped. And that's when the MC stepped forward and said, "Before dinner is served, we'd like to welcome a very special guest who asked to say a few words tonight, on behalf of someone who's made a difference in the lives of many." Danielle blinked, confused. Then Sarah walked up to the mic. She was graceful, confident, and warm. And she didn't mention me by name once. She spoke about the volunteers who show up without fanfare, the people who give quietly, who don't ask for praise or spotlight. She talked about how life isn't always about who shouts the loudest, but who listens hardest. How some people build bridges while others pose for photos in front of them. There was a ripple of discomfort through the crowd. Some people looked around. Danielle stiffened. When Sarah finished, she nodded graciously and stepped down. And then the MC said, "And now, before we dine, a surprise gift, delivered earlier today by one of Danielle's longtime friends." A server wheeled out a wrapped box onto the stage. Elegant, tasteful, classy. Danielle, now visibly rattled but trying to maintain poise, approached the box and peeled away the wrapping. Inside was a shadow box. At first, it looked like a collage, but as she turned it toward the audience, you could see it clearly. Printouts of payment confirmations, emails of thanks left unsent, party receipts, and a large envelope in the center marked, "To the woman who always takes credit, and the girl who forgot what real love looks like." A gasp went through the crowd. Danielle turned pale. She yanked the envelope open and pulled out the final page, a letter I'd written weeks ago. I hadn't planned to read it aloud, but the MC handed me the mic anyway. I walked to the front of the room, slow and steady, like the silence was a red carpet. And I read. There's a version of this story where I remain the fool, the pushover, the uncle who paid, who smiled, who vanished. But that story ends tonight. I gave without asking for thanks. I supported without demanding credit. But somewhere along the way, kindness became currency, and I was bankrupting myself to buy acceptance I never truly received. Danielle, you taught Maddie to pose before she learned to thank, to expect before she learned to earn. And Maddie, somewhere between glitter filters and group chats, you lost the memory of a man who once built you paper crowns. But this isn't about guilt or shame. It's about clarity. It's about letting the silence speak louder than applause. I'm not asking for anything. I'm leaving this behind, not to hurt, but to release. And to remind you that some bridges aren't burned. They're walked away from. I closed the letter, placed it gently back into the box, and handed the mic to the MC. Then I walked off stage, through the stunned silence, through the stares and half-formed questions. Danielle stood frozen, lips parted, the letter trembling in her hands. Maddie was crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet, real tears that streaked black mascara down her cheeks. And I kept walking, out the ballroom doors, into the cool night. No one followed me. Not one person called my name. I drove home in silence. Windows down, the last echo of the string quartet fading into nothing. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not because I won, but because I let go. They say revenge is best served cold, but sometimes it's best served with a clean exit, a steady heart, and a locked wallet.
Ta-da. I use paper plates just so I don't have to do, that's crazy. Hi Josh. Okay, I am not that lazy. I made rice and beef stir fry. Hi Hash. How are you, Hash? So, I'm gonna have some now. Plastic forks and spoons too? What the hell?